Everybody, and thank you for joining us at this regular meeting of the Madera City Council and a special meeting of the Madera Housing Authority. Today is Wednesday, July 15th. The time is 6 p.m. and this meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. The City Council meeting will be live streamed on the city's website, and members of the public may participate remotely through an electronic meeting in the following ways: via phone by dialing 669-900-9128, and the identification number is 926-6206-5347. Password is 999902. We will also accept comments via email at citycouncilpubliccomment@madera.gov. We could have roll call, please, Alicia.
Mayor Commissioner Medellin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Commissioner Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Commissioner Gallegos.
Here.
Councilmember Chairperson Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Vice Chairperson Montes.
Here.
Councilmember Commissioner Robinson.
Present.
Councilmember Commissioner Hawley.
Present.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And before we get into the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance, I just would like to take a moment to tell everybody that the city of Madera has been in a little bit of turmoil over the last couple of days. And first, on behalf of the City Council and the city of Madera, we'd like to express our condolences to Councilman Donna Hawley. He lost his wife a few days ago. Joan Hawley is a beautiful woman, a huge supporter of not only her husband, of this city and her church, and she will truly be missed. Our hearts and prayers go out to you, Mr. Councilman. And also, we learned early this morning that we lost another true Maderan in the city of Madera, Mike Molina, the owner of Kirkos. Our hearts and prayers go out to Kelly and the Molina family. Mike was a very, very dear friend, and he gave so much of himself, especially to children and the youth of Madera, via baseball. He literally did give the shirt off his back for some children. He's a gentle giant. He's a true gentleman, and he will truly, truly be missed. Once again, our hearts and prayers go out to the Molina family. With that, I welcome Pastor Barry Bernard to lead us in the invocation. And after that, we will move into the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're able to stand, please stand with us, please, for Pastor Barry Bernard from Westside Christian Fellowship.
I know. Special request.
I believe you're on mute, Pastor.
There we go. Better?
Yes, thank you.
Father, I pray first of all for these two families, for Councilman Hawley, Lord, and his loss. I just pray that you would comfort his heart. I can imagine the grief he must feel, Father. I pray for this dear brother and for his wife, Lord. I thank you for her faith. I know that it's hard, Lord, when you've been with someone that you love so much and you lose them, Lord, but I pray that you would just bless him. Father, I pray that you would encourage him. I pray that you would comfort him. And I pray that you would give him the hope and the knowledge that he will see her again in Christ, Lord. And Father, I pray for the Molinas, Lord, for the loss of this man. I know, Lord, that he was a pillar of the community. And I know that they're grieving his loss is so sudden, Lord. We don't understand when these things happen, Lord, but we know that we serve a good and holy and loving God. Lord, these are such strange times, Lord, when we have to be separated and we can only communicate via digital devices, Lord God, and we have to learn so many new things. And Father, this disease that's ravaging our country, Lord God, I pray that you would bring healing. I pray that you would bring a vaccine. I pray that you would end it soon, Lord, before it tears us apart, Lord. At least that's how it feels. But I thank you that your word promises that you hold all things together, just like you hold us together because of the comfort that's in Christ. Lord, there's just so many things out there, Lord. There's injustice. There's fear. Lord, we seem to be fighting with each other. Lord, I just pray you would bring healing. I pray you would bring peace. I pray you would bring reconciliation, understanding, and change. Lord, I pray for this council. Father, I don't envy them. They have some really tough decisions they have to make. And now at this most difficult time, Lord, I pray you would give them your strength, your power, your encouragement, and your wisdom. Fill them with your spirit that they would know exactly what to do and then could do it, Lord God. Give them wisdom with every decision. Give them wisdom and protect them, Lord. Protect all of their families. Lord, it's difficult. It's scary now, Lord, but we thank you that we have a God who protects us and that who watches over us and gives us hope. Father, we just thank you and praise you for all that you are, all that you're doing, and that, Lord God, by faith, we come to you in trust that we know you will see us through, Lord God. So just minister everything that's needed, be it grace, be it encouragement, be it hope, be it comfort, Lord, just anything that's needed. And I just lift you up, Lord God, as the Holy One of all the earth. And we give you our praise, and we ask for this city that you will guide and direct in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Thank you so much, Pastor Bernard, for those beautiful words. If you'll remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, as a reminder, if we could mute our screens until we are ready to speak, I would appreciate it. Moving into the approval of the agenda, before I ask my colleagues of the approval, staff has asked that we move item D3 this evening to the August 5th agenda. I will now ask my colleagues if there's any other changes to the agenda before we approve. Seeing none, I'll call for action on the approval of the agenda.
Mayor, move to approve with the noted changes or change.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Montes and seconded by Councilman Hawley to approve the agenda with the change of moving item D3 to the August meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. That motion. Thank you very much. Moving on to public comment. The first 15 minutes are reserved for members of the public to address the council, which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers will be asked but are not required to identify themselves and state the subject of their comments. If the subject is an item on the agenda, the mayor has the option of asking to hold that item until it is called. Comments on items listed as a public hearing should be held until the hearing is open. Council is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the council does not respond to public comment at this time. I'll ask our city clerk if we have received any public comment.
We have one, Mayor.
Thank you. If you would read that one, please. I'm assuming it's via email.
It is via email. It's from Steve and Kim Salter. It says, I want to start by thanking Councilman Hawley and Councilman Robinson for opposing the cannabis item at the last meeting. I also oppose it. They may have legalized cannabis in California, but Madera County voted against it, and it's still against federal law. I think the goal should be to bring good paying jobs to Madera, but with most good paying jobs comes drug testing. And if you have marijuana in your system, you won't pass and you won't get the job. Our poverty rate is already high, and our unemployment rate is double the California average before COVID-19 hit. I know Councilman Rodriguez is pushing that the city needs revenue. Well, every time I pull into the Target shopping center on Herndon and 99, I look at how full the parking lot is and think of how much revenue that Madera is losing. Maybe if Councilman Rodriguez would have put as much energy into something that would benefit everyone in Madera instead of marijuana dispensaries to benefit a few of everyone, would have something to be excited about. Councilman Rodriguez also likes to compare cannabis to alcohol. Only 12% of the US population smokes marijuana. 70% drink alcohol. Cannabis is only legal in 11 states and federally illegal. Alcohol has been legal in every state in the union for 87 years. You could drink a couple of margaritas on Sunday, take a drug test on Monday, and still have your job. In closing, I want to say this is wrong to put this through when the public can't give their response in person. I thought all of you took office to make Madera better, not tear it down, and I will be encouraging as many Maderans as I can to vote no on this ballot measure.
Thank you very much, Alicia. I appreciate that. With no other public comment, I will move into our presentations. And as always, we welcome the Director of our Health Department, Ms. Sarah Boss, who I'm sure will have more interesting news for us this evening. Ms. Boss, good to see you again.
Hello, thanks again for having me. I'll start with an update of our cases. As you know, or may know at this point, that we upgraded our system of reporting, and all of the back office infrastructure to be able to report data accurately and to be able to track the increasing caseload that's happening in Madera. And so our cases are now being reported with a 1-day delay. And what that does is allows us to make sure that the information is completely accurate before we release it to the public. So we're reporting the cases from yesterday, July 14th. And on the 14th, we had 51 new cases, bringing the total number of reported cases to 1,054. I do have the dashboard open. And it's not functioning properly because I have to be on, that's okay. I'm gonna move on. I encourage you to visit our data dashboard. If you go to our website, which is maderacounty.com/COVID-19, there's a big button on the left side, really close to the top of the page, that has the data dashboard. And people can, there it is. Thanks, Arnaldo. You can see our total case count there. We do have 13 currently hospitalized, and some of that includes a bit of delay as we upgraded our system. So we're still in the process of contacting all of the individuals that have been identified in the last couple days, so that hospitalization number may go up. We are reporting 1 additional death today, bringing the total to 10. There is a bit of delay also in our reporting of the deaths because what we're finding is that individuals, their test results trail the actual event. And so we want to make sure that we visually see the lab report before we report it as a COVID death. We want the information that we're providing to be accurate. So there was an update to the testing guidance that is being used to be able to prioritize COVID testing. COVID testing, due to volume, has become not as limited as it was in the beginning, for sure, but certainly more limited than it was a few weeks ago. Many people are interested in getting testing, in addition to all of those who really need to get testing. And so the state has put together testing guidance, and we would encourage the community to follow this guidance with regards to priority. And we're looking at a scheduling system for our mobile testing unit, and also working with our state testing site at the Madera Fairgrounds to be able to prioritize tests according to this guidelines from the state. So Tier 1 are patients who are hospitalized with COVID-19 symptoms and people who are linked to outbreaks. So outbreaks are could be at a work site, it might be at a place of worship, it might be at a congregate living facility, it might be in a prison. So all of those areas are considered very high risk because of the number of people that could be exposed, or due to the individuals being quite vulnerable, and we want to monitor them closely. Tier 2 are symptomatic people, healthcare workers, and those who live or work in nursing homes. They may be asymptomatic, but there's regular testing of staff of nursing homes and skilled nursing facilities, as well as homeless shelters or prisons. Tier 3 are asymptomatic essential workers. And so those might be emergency responders, law enforcement. There are lots of essential workers. Tier 4 is the general population. And so general population, we're encouraging them, if they don't have symptoms, if they haven't actually been exposed to a COVID-19 case, then we ask that they wait to be tested until our turnaround time for testing is more around 48 hours. And right now, our average turnaround for testing is closer to 4 or 5 days. So we will notify the public and let them know when that turnaround time has been brought down to more like 48 hours because of volume. And then people who in the general population can then seek testing. One important thing to note about the testing guidance is something that we have noticed that's also had a big impact on our volume of tests and our ability to test people in a timely way. And that is that many employers are wanting individuals to have a negative test after they have been positive in order to return to work. So this guidance actually identifies that as a discriminatory behavior towards someone who has had COVID-19 because there is clinical clearance that's available. And what clinical clearance means is that the person has, it's been at least 10 days from their first day of symptoms, and they have not had a fever in the last 3 days without medication. If somebody meets that criteria and the rest of their symptoms are resolving well, they are able to return to work without a negative test. This is important both because we don't want everybody testing when we don't need them to, but also because there are lots of false positives for people who have recovered from COVID-19 because the PCR tests pick up kind of remaining dead virus in the system and can create a false positive. So it would keep them off of work for longer than it's really necessary. I want to also update people with regards to the symptoms of COVID-19. We have continued to learn about this virus. It is updated science. And on the CDC website, there are more symptoms that have been listed. So many of them are still familiar to you: fever and chills, cough, shortness of breath, or difficulty breathing. Also, fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache. That's something that's become familiar. And new loss of taste or smell. This one is an unusual symptom, but we do see it often, and it's usually by itself. It's usually the only symptom that the person has. Sore throat, there you go, there's the list. So sore throat, congestion or runny nose, and specifically in Madera County, I've spoken to healthcare providers, and we're seeing more individuals that the only symptoms they have are gastrointestinal, so nausea or vomiting or diarrhea. So in our local area, we're seeing more people with those symptoms for COVID-19. So in response to both of these items, both the limitation of testing and also that there are more symptoms, we have led an effort in the Central Valley to create a website, actually 2 websites, one in English and one in Spanish, to help people understand what to do if they're feeling sick, if they're experiencing any of the symptoms you can see there on the screen. The 2 websites are www.valleycovidhelp.com and ayudadelvallecovid.com. I can see he's bringing that up. So you can see, if you don't feel great, we want you to self-isolate. That means without someone telling you to, you can isolate. And as you scroll down, if you have COVID symptoms, which we're updating to include more of the things that are listed on the CDC website, the thing you're supposed to do is COVID. C is contact your job. O is observe your symptoms daily. And as you're monitoring your symptoms, if they become severe, seek medical attention. V, visit your public health website. Isolate from others is I, and D is determine your contacts. It's important that people know that public health or law enforcement, if you have a positive COVID test, you will never be forcibly removed from your home. You can isolate safely in your home with your family, following the instructions that are on this website. So we know that there's been confusion about that, and we just want to reassure people that you can protect your family and still isolate in the same home. But it requires that you and your family follow some very specific instructions that are on this website. In determining your contacts, there's information there where you can actually identify those individuals, and then a short script of what you can tell them when you call them so that they know that they need to quarantine as well. We're going to be adding another page to this website coming up soon that will help people answer questions about whether or not they've been exposed. We're also going to be promoting this, and many of you will receive in your inbox, or you'll see on social media, that we're going to be doing blasts of emails that we would love for you to forward on to others. There are social media posts that are going to be posted throughout the Valley. So the counties that worked on this together are part of a consortium of public health departments that are as far north as San Joaquin, as far south as Tulare and Kings counties. So 11 counties have worked on this together. And that's because the response to COVID can be the same regardless of where you're at. So we really want this information out to folks so that as soon as someone is feeling sick, they're isolating and preventing the spread of COVID. We're really wanting to slow the spread of COVID because we want Madera County and the Central Valley to be as open as we can safely. As you know, we're on the monitoring list. That means that based on certain measures that we are monitoring locally and the state is monitoring as well, we are over the threshold. And actually in Madera County, we're significantly over the threshold at this point for what is considered safe. As we are on the monitoring list, there have been several closures that have happened. There have also been things that have been required to move outdoors. Most recently on Monday, fitness centers, worship services, protests, offices for non-essential sectors, personal care services like nail salons and massages, hair salons and barbershops have all needed to move outdoors. Bars have closed completely unless they are able to offer dine-in, sit-down dining outside, and there's guidance specific for outdoor dining. So that's one of the big questions that we've received. I just want to run through some of the key frequently asked questions that people have brought to us. The first is about bars. As I said, I think we need to keep in mind that all of these things that have been identified to move outside are activities that bring together multiple households and have lots of mixing. So when you think of a worship service or a protest, a political protest, it's several households coming together and mixing, sometimes closely. Same with a bar. So by moving it outside, if we still have people standing real close to each other and mingling around, then it kind of defeats the purpose. You're outside, which is better than indoors in terms of transmission, but it's still problematic. So for worship services, we still want people to spread out 6 feet apart and to wear facial coverings. And same at a bar. Obviously, when you're eating or drinking, you're not going to wear your face covering, but you need to be seated so that they can ensure that distance is happening. We've gotten questions with regards to really important activities that are often conducted at churches or other places of worship. And those are things like group counseling, small Bible studies or religious study, AA groups, things like that. And so Dr. Paul has allowed that small groups of no more than 10 people can gather with distancing and face coverings in order to do these really important things, especially in these times when people need mental health support and encouragement. But again, no handshakes, hugs, or high fives. We're still distancing. So we've also gotten questions about, well, our building opens on 2 sides with big doors. Until we hear otherwise from the state, right now, outdoors means outdoors, not inside a building in which lots of doors can be opened. If you have a structure that's a sunshade, like a parking solar panels or a pop-up tent, something like that, that's great to use as a sunshade. We encourage that, but it does need to have all 4 walls open. many people interpreted the closure of indoor malls as all stores or all retail stores. So we have seen some closures of some of the retail stores in town that actually are not required to close. And that might have been a corporate decision, some of the larger stores like Marshall's or something like that. But it is, those stores are actually allowed to be open as long as they have a direct entrance into their store. The purpose of closing indoor malls, if you think about Fashion Fair in Fresno, for instance, is there's lots of gathering that's social, that's not really about shopping, that happens in malls, and people are pretty close together in between stores. I also want to just emphasize that gatherings are not permitted. So the only gatherings that are permitted at this time are those small groups of really essential services like AA groups, mental health group counseling, those kinds of things of 10 or less are allowed. But, and then worship services are allowed because they are protected, and also political protests because they are protected. They're in a different category. And so there's a legal reason why those are allowed to happen outdoors. But other types of gatherings are not permitted. And you can read the specific guidelines on the state's website, which is, let's see, I don't know if you want to bring it up, Arnoldo. It's the state COVID website. But anyway, it's not one of the guidances that's a direct link. You have to search gatherings, and then the language will come up. So I just wanted to, because we've gotten a lot of questions around, well, we're going to have a training for our business and it's 30 people and we're going to meet, but we're distanced. That actually is not allowed. That again is high risk, especially because it's indoors. So we're still wanting to do lots of distancing. And of course, we do not want people to gather socially in homes with multiple households. So I'll stop there and field any questions that you have.
Thank you, Sarah. As I mentioned, very, very valuable information for our community. There's a lot out there on social media and hearsay and things like that. So it's great to hear directly from you. Councilman Donald Hawley has a question. You're on mute, Mr. Councilman.
Sarah, what about for funerals? I thought, how are you basing those right now?
Funerals are classified as a worship service, and so they are allowed as long as they are outdoors.
Okay.
And it's going to be really difficult to distance at a funeral. We know that that's not natural or normal. People want to embrace and encourage and comfort one another. And I'm so sorry to hear about your wife. But it's important that we do what we can to try and distance, and of course wear face coverings, even at an event like a funeral.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, speaking of social media, and as I mentioned, there's lots of things going on there. Recently, I noticed that someone shared that there's testing at other sites like pharmacies or specifically like at a CVS. Is that happening? Is it recommended? What are your thoughts?
So I have not heard that there's testing going on at pharmacies. I know that the state website has locations where testing is available, and I don't know how it is that sites get up on that map. It's a map, actual tool where people can put in their address and find test sites that are nearby. But I can look into that and let you know.
So for whether it's social media or some other form of media, if somebody had heard or read where there's testing available, whether it be something over the counter at a pharmacy or some other place, they should be very reluctant and double check with the county health department before they do so.
Absolutely. So an over-the-counter test we would not recommend at this time. But there are times in which pharmacists have been employed to do things like provide flu shots. And so I'd have to look into whether or not they are expanding to actually collect specimens for the test the same way we do for mobile testing. I can look into that.
Great. Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. Sarah, the Berenda testing site this morning, do we have a problem out there with the number of folks who actually showed up and the amount of testing kits?
That has been a consistent issue. So one of the things that we have been letting people know is that our mobile test site has a maximum of 80 tests. That's our capacity with regards to staff and the volume that we are allowed to send to the lab that we work with. And so what we've been doing is communicating that with the local community as much as possible. And then also making it really clear when we have hit that 80 test mark in the line. So we mark the last car, and then people know as they're pulling up that the test site is full. So that's one of the reasons why we're looking at implementing scheduling the same way that the fairground site is, but it's going to take us a little bit of time to identify the right tool to be able to do that. We've been communicating as much as we possibly can with the public to let them know.
Yeah, that would be definitely helpful. I got a couple of calls, and people were there at 7 and earlier for the 8 o'clock opening. And at 8:45, they were told that there was no more kits. And so maybe, yeah, the communication is maybe a little bit better. I don't know. You had staff out there, but I don't know if anybody was out there advising people that you might as well not waste your time because we don't have that many kids.
We have been communicating. It's been a constant conversation with us about how to manage that. And so I think it is important that you, as council members, watch our Facebook page for announcements, because that's going to be really helpful to you to understand the status of what's going on. The overwhelming of demand of testing has really emerged in the last week and a half to 2 weeks. So we've had to quickly pivot to be able to address and message about the volume and the issue that you're describing.
Thanks again, Sarah. Any further questions? We always appreciate you joining us this evening, Sarah, and giving us the updated information. Thank you so very much. And once again, we have to thank you and your team and everybody at the health department for your dedication and all your hard work during this difficult time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Moving on to the next presentation, if you can't tell by the background, we have Richard Peralta with us with the United Way of Fresno Madera to discuss Listos California campaign. Rico,
good evening. Yeah, good evening, Mayor and council members. So thrilled to be here with you all. Appreciate the invitation to present with you some information about the Listos California campaign. If I could be so bold as to share my screen, a little slide presentation that I have for you all. Are you all able to see my screen at this time? And in the interest of time, and I understand I want to leave some time for potential questions from city leaders, I will go ahead and fast track through introductions. I'm Director of Program and Training, and I also have the pleasure of being a leader of this statewide campaign for Fresno and Madera counties. We're 2 of 24 counties in the state of California that have received funding from the California Office of Emergency Services for this Listos California campaign. All 58 counties of the state are being touched in some way, shape, or form, but these 24 counties have gotten some really innovative approaches to emergency preparedness. And you know, I'm going to go ahead and I have a video here, but this PowerPoint slide deck is going to be shared with you all. You're more than welcome to watch this at your leisure, but in the interest of time, I'll move through this. And also with technical aspects of this, I wouldn't even want to be so bold as to try the video, as that might give us some troubles. But let me just talk a little bit about the campaign goals. We got started about a year ago, and it was more of a soft launch. We got our first engagements in the city of Madera in November around the holidays, partnering with our friends at Madera Food Bank, as well as First 5 Madera County with food distribution events toward the holidays. But the goal for the statewide campaign has been to engage over 1 million diverse and socially vulnerable Californians by December of 2020. The intent is to deliver culturally and linguistically competent support building resiliency in vulnerable communities. These being folks that are hard to reach. These are folks that are perhaps elderly. These are folks that are maybe disabled. These are folks that are isolated geographically, or that they're linguistically isolated, or having some other lack of access to information and resources. And we'll get into that a little bit, but it's also overlaying what are the risks in the state of California for wildfire, for earthquake, and for flood. And so that is why, you know, these 24 counties were selected, and we'll talk a little bit about the data that went into that. But one of the key messages of the campaign is we really want to see these vulnerable Californians to maybe change the way they think, change the way that they act in the event of emergency or disaster situations. We want them to see themselves as first responders. I think that message is resonating even more now. We didn't obviously, as nobody did, anticipate this unprecedented, you know, disaster situation that we find ourselves in as a nation and as a society. But it is resonating more now, this message about preparedness, about being ready, and you know, this thought that you are the first responder in your household, in your neighborhood, in your community. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that came with COVID-19, but as well, perhaps some of the opportunities that we were able to help navigate the campaign strategy. So want you to know that, yes, this is informed by research statewide. Last summer, they did a lot of message and attitude testing around emergency preparedness. You know, Governor Gavin Newsom and the state legislature were really bold in this new vision for rolling out emergency preparedness, doing it kind of simultaneously, seeding first responder community and volunteer organizations like CERT or fire safe councils, but as well community-based organizations and nonprofits like the United Way, Fresno and Madera counties to utilize the systems, the services, the programs and supports that we have with the most vulnerable residents. So not at all, you know, folks that were necessarily experts in the disaster preparedness space, but we did have touch points with the key constituents, with the key demographics, right? So we tested messaging. We were armed with that data around, I'll give you an example just in the interest of time. It was found in the focus groups, in the polling, in the surveying that they conducted, and some of that was done right on the ground in Fresno County and Tulare County, because those are 2 of 5 that were target counties. But that the doom and gloom message about disaster preparedness was not resonating with folks as much as, you know, really arming them with tools and resources and practical information about how they can be prepared, but not trying to scare them into their senses around disaster preparedness. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we weave that into our strategies as well. I mentioned the data. There were professors at Sac State. There was an advisory group that looked at these, you know, hazard mitigation plans. They looked at data county by county of all those vulnerable categories of people, and as well all the risks of some of those disasters, the big 3 that we talked about: fire, earthquake, and flood. And they really came out with some interesting data for us to really drive our decision making around where to roll out our campaign. So I'd imagine leadership from the city of Madera. You look at the state of California as it is reflected on this 2018 safety hazard mitigation plan, and the social vulnerability index. When we're talking about folks that are living in extreme poverty, we're talking about folks that are you know, coming from diverse ethnic backgrounds, that they're maybe more likely to be renters than owners, that they're more likely to be elderly, that they're more likely to be disabled, that they're more likely to have limited access to information and resources. So you see which part of our state had the highest risk as according to this data. And so we were fortunate enough to receive some initial funding for Fresno and Madera County to support this effort for our residents. Specifically looking at some of the things that informed our decisions was we've been doing a lot of work up in the District 5 with Supervisor Tom Wheeler up in the 41 corridor because of the just the dense population of the aging and elderly, as well as dense populations of folks living with disabilities. And so those are folks that are extremely vulnerable in the event of also the extreme risk of a wildfire up there in that area. But In the city of Madera, we've been fortunate enough to work with some partners that have helped us to distribute information. And we've done so in pretty innovative ways, especially, in light of COVID-19 and ensuing shelter-in-place orders, where, we had some really well-laid plans between November and January for events, partnerships with the school district, partnership with local organizations to do public events. And of course, a lot of that went out the window. So we had to really be very strategic about how we can get this information into the hands of residents. I'm gonna share with you all, and I'll make sure to pass it through channels so that you all have our disaster preparedness kits. This one in the top right-hand corner of the screen looks a little funny, looks like a typo, but it is actually like more or less like a map that gets unfolded and unfurled, and it has all the planning that you would need to do in your household or with your family to be ready for a disaster. As well, you'll see residents. Matter of fact, I was out there on Saturday with a team of about 8 volunteers. We were canvassing it was a pet vaccination event and microchipping at the fairgrounds. And we said, hey, you know what? We're seeing a lot of cars. Cars are waiting a long time. It's about 106 degrees out. But you know what? Let's go over to Lowe's in the parking lot and let's talk to some of the folks that are doing their shopping on this Saturday. And what we were giving them was information. Keep yourself and your stuff safe, your life in a bag. We've been giving this out a lot to the folks in the city of Madera that we prepare their taxes, because they would come to our tax centers and they would have their W-9s, the W-2s, they have 1099s, they have their ID, they have all this documentation because they weren't sure if they needed it. And we'd say, well, what are you going to do with all that personal information, all that financial information when you go home and in between these tax appointments? Make sure you keep it in a safe space. A zip type bag is really smart. The fire department would tell you, if you had a home fire and you weren't able to get this stuff out and they dumped, hundreds, if not thousands of gallons of water on that point in your house, you're going to have your documents destroyed if you don't have them in a tight bag. We also use the opportunity to disseminate information about affordable internet options, about census, and about other pertinent services. As you know, United Way, we're your provider of 211 call centers. So we have a lot of text campaigns as well as call-in services. So we want to make sure that information is getting out, sure, about emergency preparedness, but we're also disseminating information about COVID-19, information that would benefit these vulnerable residents in the area. So we have a lot of curriculum and scripting for phone calls and phone banking, scripting for even tabling events. So like I mentioned about being in the Lowe's parking lot, what that conversation needs to look and sound and feel like. And so we've done a lot of training with volunteers, and we've been in a fortunate position where we've been able to partner with organizations, because the state funding was designed for us to be able to sub-grant to other community-based organizations and nonprofits. So we had a competitive RFP, a bidding process, and we were really, really deliberate about who we selected to partner with, because we wanted to make sure, one, that they're serving the vulnerable residents in the community, but two, that they could respond to that data about, how to get information out to those folks that are most at risk. And so a few of the partners that we've been working with are as follows. We had Hands On Central California, which is like your volunteer service organization for this area. They serve from as far as Stanislaus County down to Tulare County, but a lot of efforts in Madera and Fresno County, central part of the state. They're like the Match.com for volunteers and then service opportunities. And we've been really helping to bolster their efforts around coronavirus and COVID-19 to make sure that there's enough volunteers and community-based organizations to respond to so many urgent needs. They've been doing a great job, because they have so many touch points with retired senior volunteer programs, with Senior Corps, with other service agencies and enterprises. So it's been a really great partnership. Not to mention, when they train and we mobilize volunteers, they are activating folks in neighborhoods and community spaces that we wouldn't otherwise get touches, and they're really bought into the mission of getting the information disseminated. Resources for Independent Central Valley, also a key partner in this work, because they have so many folks that are in home care, and these are folks living with disabilities that they have in-home care specialists that have been trained to work them through a process of developing a plan, making sure that they're getting alerts about emergencies and disasters in their area. Even things that we go beyond, fire, earthquake, and flood, but when we talk about like public safety power shutoffs, we want to make sure that they have a plan in place should the grid go down for a period of an hour, 2 hours, or 2 days. So we want them to be prepared, and so there's a lot of capacity building going on with that. Reading and Beyond is another partner that is working in a capacity of doing the California Bridge project. They're doing a lot of case management with Madera residents, and they've serviced about 550 of their California Bridge Academy clients. They've worked into their scripting of their capacity building, and their intake process is the checklist of making sure that they're prepared in the event of a disaster. Other examples of things that we're doing with virtual reality that we're existing in right now is webinars, phone banking. We pretty much flip 211 around, where we're not just waiting for people to call us and have inbound calls, but we're actually doing what we call reverse 211 with our database, and we're calling folks to check in on them, do welfare checks, as well as to run through a script of emergency preparedness. We're still doing tabling events, of course, using PPE, and we're actually leveraging PPE as a great opportunity to distribute it out to folks that need it. So we're giving out masks, we're giving out hand sanitizers, personal use items, along with the materials. And we're leveraging partnerships, great partnership with the food banks, First Five, the bolstering of 211 or other volunteer organizations active in disasters. We have been putting out a lot of broadcast, digital medium, Facebook Live events in Spanish and English. And so radio and TV have also been huge. And we've got some special initiatives that are coming down the pipe statewide that are a little bit, they're essentially like our reverse 211. Essentially, they're opportunities to do some phone banking with folks. It's called the Social Bridging Project, where if a county's emergency manager will agree to participate, then county residents, registered voters, would be contacted, and they would work through a script on emergency preparedness. So just a couple of pictures from the event. This Saturday was the one on the left here. We had cars lining up with their pets. It was really cute, to get chipped or to get vaccinated. And so we had volunteers that were working to talk to the folks in their cars. And it's just like with taxes, before we had to shut down our office, if folks were sitting for a long period of time, they're easily captivated. It's easy to engage them in a conversation that is relevant about protecting their documents. Food distribution events, when we're distributing commodities, it's also a great time they need a bag. And so we've been handing out these, we had donated bags from Best Buy, these big U-line thick bags that we give them the bag, but it also has all the disaster preparedness materials in it, so that they can load up on food, and then they have information that they can talk about maybe around the dinner table. Giving out PPE, as I said, water bottles, other essential items along with the materials. And then a really innovative project from Hands-On that some of the senior citizens in Madera, they would come in, they would pick up kits to make masks at home and then distribute them to folks that are either in home care or in facilities that needed them. And we would give them materials around emergency preparedness as well. Really important for us is to basically weave emergency preparedness into all of our strategic initiatives. And so to simplify the messages that we're trying to deliver, it's really 5 essential steps. It's one is get alerts. Many of you probably recall a couple of weeks ago we had a slight earthquake. CalAlerts.org, if you were registered on CalAlerts.org, you would have gotten a text message. In this case of this earthquake, it came about 4 minutes too late. But earthquakes are not as obviously easy to anticipate and predict as other disasters. But we want to make sure that folks are getting information about disasters in their area. We want to make sure they're making a plan for communication, family members knowing where to go in the event of an emergency, that they practice that plan, that you pack both the go bag as well as you build the stay box. Been really thrilled with the folks that have been through trainings that we've offered. They knew the nomenclature of shelter in place, as so many residents didn't really know what that terminology meant, what it entailed, but the disaster preparedness community knows what shelter in place is, and you build your stay box. And we also just want to make sure that folks are getting messages out to friends and neighbors. And so this type of messaging, as you could imagine, would really, it's really resonating now. I mean, the focusing event that is coronavirus has really kind of reminded us all about the importance of being ready, of preparedness, and being proactive. And so for us at the United Way, it's been a great opportunity for us to participate in the statewide work and to benefit residents of Madera County. The ticker is going. We got the scoreboard working. I checked it this morning. In the state of California, we've reached over 11 million folks. There's a couple of different things. One is we're about 70% of the way there toward our 1 million by December. 702,149. We have not reached all 160,000 plus residents in Madera County. I'm hoping by the census count when it gets complete that we'll be able to reach the most vulnerable. I'd say collectively in our efforts, we've reached about 2,000 that have been through training. We've reached about 95,000 that have been touched with some of our collateral, whether it be social media, radio, TV, email blasts that we've been tracking. And because we had these touch points in the community, they allowed us during the coronavirus as a statewide campaign to track communication activities to reach vulnerable segments in the community with coronavirus information. And so that's where that figure of 527,915. So that's something that we did between March 13th and May 30th that we were collecting that information about that impact. And you have my contact information. I know I didn't leave a heck of a lot of time for questions, but I'm happy to field questions as well. I'm happy even in the chat box if you wanted to put them, and I'll stay on a little bit longer and I could address questions that way as well if something comes up that you think of later on.
Thank you, Rico, very, very much. A lot of very, very valuable information. Any council member have any questions or comments? We on behalf of the Madera City Council, we have to thank you and United Way, President Madera, so much. You are an absolute a fantastic partner in the city of Madera. You fund and support so many of the programs here, especially the most vulnerable here in the city of Madera. So on behalf of the City Council, we want to thank you so very, very much. Please give our best to Ms. Callahan.
Will do.
Again, the support that you have given to this community is immeasurable. One last thing before you go, we're all curious on what your face covering looks like.
Living united, sir.
Love it. Love it.
I get a lot of compliments in stores. I don't think there's a better message or brand to be living right now in our community than Live United.
Absolutely.
I tell you what, I'm gonna send you and all the council members and leaders on the call, send you some of these. We just got these in, and would love to see you out in the community supporting the cause.
See there, you do know how to read between the lines. You do know. We'll expect ours. Thank you very much, Rico. And then I appreciate you staying on for just a little bit.
I'll hang out. Feel free to type it in the Zoom chat.
Wonderful. Thanks again. We appreciate it. And moving on to some more good news. We have some fantastic news. As many of you know, State Center Community College has now been accredited. And it's something that this community has been waiting for about 24 years now. And we have lots to celebrate, but with us this evening is the president of Madera Community College, Angel Reina. Angel, are you with us? I know you had some computer issues.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Congratulations. It's so great to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for your service to the community. Appreciate that. As you all know, I was before you, I want to say 13 months ago when I first arrived to California. I arrived here May 20th, and then a month later, I was before you introducing myself and letting you know who I was and what we were trying to accomplish, and having an understanding at that point. I had only been in the community about a month, but understanding the meaning of what it meant to the community, the faculty, staff, and students, to get us to college status. And we collectively and collaboratively worked to get to this point, had our first site visit in October. The commission then ruled and granted us candidacy, but we were determined and we asked them to come right back in April, and believe we had the first ever virtual visit by a commission on April. And we felt confident after that. And then on June 29th, the commission granted us initial accreditation, which opened the path for us to be granted college status, which will be official July 20th, because we have two masters per se. We have to answer to the commission and then also to the state chancellor's office. And so the Board of Governors, if you're all interested, I can send you the information, but their Board of Governors meeting is on Monday, begins at 12:30. And we're on an item there being recommended to become the 116th community college in the California system. And we know that 2020 has been challenging, and we wanted to provide at least a ray of sunshine in this storm we're navigating. And so we have that excitement inside the institution and know what it means for the community. And so we're thrilled to be able to become the newest community college. And there's a lot of sense of pride within our faculty, staff, and students, and then just the general community with the folks that we've been connecting with. But let me just say, it was not easy. The faculty and staff and students got together, and you as well as community members, when we were developing our mission, vision, and values, some of you were present, giving feedback, et cetera. And so just want to thank you once again for your support and just the general acknowledgement. I know it means a lot to our faculty, staff, and students. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And once again, congratulations. You do have a fantastic team there at the community college campus. It's kind of difficult to roll off the tongue, but it's such a wonderful new title. And again, congratulations to you and your team and your faculty and your staff. And hopefully very soon we'll get students back. I think you had mentioned to me earlier that for the fall, it's going to be online again. Is that correct?
Yeah, primarily online. We're, as of now, because you know how fluid things are with COVID-19. So as of now, we're focusing on some biology and chemistry classes, and obviously the nursing program, because it's essential that they do hands-on pieces, some welding and machining, all socially distanced, face covering, et cetera. We're planning also to provide some student support services, as Rico from the United Way talked about. There's some folks that need a lot of supports. We have a lot of families that are multi-generational, so they're all living in one home, and for them to Zoom effectively in a quiet atmosphere and engage in the classroom is problematic. And that's assuming that they have adequate internet and adequate technology. I have all of those things. I have enough space in my home. I have what I think to be adequate technology, yet I struggle a bit. So what we want to do is make sure that if we can are allowed to do it, is have our library, computer labs, socially distanced, because we've been developing plans, but we want to center our students in our decision making as much as possible with respect to our primary focus of keeping everybody safe. So that's our goal for now. Fantastic.
Once again, congratulations. You've served so many students, not just in the Madera Unified area, but in the entire Madera County and the region. Just an absolute godsend. Congratulations. Good luck in the future, and then we'll be sure to be connected and cut a ribbon hopefully very soon.
Yes, thank you very much. And just one thing, like you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, start taking that center word. When you say Madera Center, say Madera Community College, because that's right. That's our present and future now. So thank you very much once again for allowing me this platform. Appreciate it. And thank you once again to everybody here in your service to the community. Appreciate it.
Take care, Mr. Raymond. Thank you. Moving on to our consent calendar. Matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, a member of the public or a member of the council may request an item to be removed from the consent calendar. It will be considered separately. I'll ask my colleagues if there's any changes or any items that need to be pulled from the consent calendar. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent.
Move to approve the consent calendar as presented, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Been moved by Councilman Rodriguez and seconded by Councilman Montes to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to our first public hearing, this is item number C1, the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG COVID-19 final funding allocations and the amended 2019-2020 action plan. I believe Ms. Sierra, you'll be taking this item.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is an item that you have seen before. Most recently, during a special meeting on June 18th, staff brought before you the item requesting that council approve tentative allocations at that time. Today, we come before you requesting that council move forward in approving final allocations for this CDBG COVID allocation. I want to distinguish this allocation from the typical annual action plan allocation that we bring before you every year. This is a special allocation that the city is eligible to receive, provided that we fulfill all of the funding agency's requirements. In this case, the funding agency is HUD, and we started this process in April, and we've been moving really quickly through the process diligently, but also fulfilling all of the requirements to ensure that we disseminate and distribute this funding as quickly as we can to the community. Because it is a public hearing, I will turn it over to Program Manager David Dybus that will give you a recap of the process that has been undertaken thus far. He has been very immersed in CDBG for the last couple of months. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dave.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight and move forward with the public hearing to do the final funding allocation for the CARES Act grant allocation that we received. The objective of tonight's public hearing is for council to adopt a resolution to approve the final funding allocations that were tentatively approved back on June 18th. Then we can move forward to do the substantial amendment to the 2019-20 action plan, and also need requests to have city manager sign the related certifications that HUD requires for the submission for the substantial amendment to the plan. This is a recap. As Yvette said, we received notification mid-April. We received public comment on May 6th. We received applications a 2-week span during the month of May. Block Grant Commission met right after that to go over the applications thoroughly and to offer their recommendations to the City Council. And we met on June 18th to go over those recommendations and to have City Council do their recommendations moving forward. There's a list of the council meetings we had, as including tonight, and tonight is to do the public hearing to do the final funding allocation. These were just as a reminder, these were what we went over back on May 6th in regards to the public comment, rent and mortgage assistance, food assistance, utility billing assistance, and small business assistance were the 4 primary areas that were identified as what was felt was needed for the citizens of Madera. One caveat with the directives that were available for this CDBG CV funding was that there was no cap on the public services that are available to be used. Normally it's 15% for the annual action plan, but they waived that cap so anybody could be served with this funding and not be capped at the 15% level. For our funding allocation, as you can see, we had available $50,000. Let's just go through the columns. The funding allocations administration, the maximum award amount was $107,628. And like I said, public service had no cap, and as well as capital projects had no cap. For the total, we had grant requests of $1,007,396. And we went through all those applications to get to the next level. City administration requested $50,000, and on June 18th, City Council agreed to use that as a tentative allocation for City Council to administer the COVID funding grant. for the council public service allocation recommendations. As you can see in the first column, that was the list of the organizations in the city that applied for the COVID funding. The requested grant amounts were in the second column, going down to a little over $900,000 worth of requests. And city council on the third column, their tentative allocations are listed there for Madera EDC for $156,000. CAP MC for $90,000, the Downtown Association for $55,000, and the Coalition for Community Justice for $885,000. There was no capital projects or public improvement applications that were submitted for the COVID funding. After the public hearing on 18th, our 5-day public review and comment period began. That was another caveat that happened with this funding, to have HUD be able to give us the ability to turn it around faster than the normal 30-day period that's required for the annual action plan. Any interested parties were available to comment during that period, and the comment period ended on June 25th. The city did not receive any public comment regarding the proposed allocations that were done by council. The next steps are for the council to adopt the resolution to approve the final allocations that were proposed, so we can move forward with the substantial amendment and approve that, and then allow the city manager to sign the related certifications. Staff will at that time submit the substantial amendment to HUD for their review with the finalized numbers, and then respond to any questions they have about the process that was taking place to arrive at this date. Right now, just open it up to council questions or any public hearing questions that may be available for Yvette and myself.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. I appreciate that. Any questions of Ms. Yadeta or Mr. Davis?
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, Ms. Montoy.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure, I wasn't sure if I've been here, but I don't think I heard Mr. Councilmember Montes disclose his conflict of interest. The resolution does include language regarding the allocation to CAP MC.
I believe that is another council member, if I'm not mistaken, not Councilman Montes. Or was it Councilman Montes? Yeah, no, I'm mistaken. My apologies. Councilman Montes.
My apologies. So I'll just disclose that I am a non-compensated board member for CAP MC.
And will you leave the room or will you continue to participate?
I was planning on continuing to participate.
And that's per the FPPC letter you received?
FPPC letter received, yeah, with that advice.
Thank you.
I ditto that.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Mr. Councilman.
I ditto that too. I'm approving that that I was aware of the CAP MC as well as the Big Brothers Big Sisters.
So you have the same exact position that Mr. Montes has, Mr. Holly?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. And Mayor Pro Tem Garcia has a comment.
Yes, and as I've stated before, my daughter is a staff member of the Madera Coalition for Community Justice. So I feel it would be inappropriate for me to take a vote on that portion of the vote. So if I need to leave the room during that, then I'll do so.
I'm Mr. Councilmember Garcia. If you, it's one item. It's one resolution that you would be taking action on. It is one hearing. So if you've determined to do that, I would recommend that you momentarily leave the Zoom room.
Yeah, it's a lot easier this way. You don't actually have to leave the room. Just mute yourself and take off video, right? Yeah, I'll do that right now. Thank you.
Stop and stop the video.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. If there's no further comment, I want to reiterate this is a notice public hearing, and so I will open the public hearing now. And just for the record, I believe Mr. Davis had mentioned that in the last 30 days there has been no public comment. Is that correct?
Actually, it was a 5-day, well, even beyond 5 days, we haven't received any public comment as of tonight.
Thank you. And I'll ask our city clerk if we've received anything through the public comment channels via email.
Unreceived, Mayor.
I want to thank the BGC. It was a long discussion last month that we were here, and I want to thank them for their time and efforts, and of course our grants department for all your efforts, and the city council. This money is going to be put to great use, especially when it comes to rental assistance, mortgage assistance, also utility payments, and then of course our small businesses that are really suffering. I think it was a month and a half ago, we had the discussion about our economy. Is it going to be a U or is it going to be a V type of rebound? And it turns out it's more like a W. A few weeks ago, I think we felt we were on our way onto recovery, and then here we are taking a bit of a plunge. And so not a moment too soon that we have some monies available to help these small businesses and to help our community. So I think all involved. If there is no more comment, I will close public comment, bring it back to council for action.
So moved to approve the recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Hawley and seconded by Councilman Robinson to approve item C1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? We'll let the record show that Councilman Garcia has abstained. With that, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the record, Mayor Pro Tem Garcia has joined us as we move on to item C2. This is confirm a diagram and assessments for the citywide landscape and lighting assessment district zones of benefit for the annual levy for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Keith, you're on mute.
That's always embarrassing. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayor and council members. What I started to say was you'll recognize this presentation from the last meeting is very much a duplicate from the last meeting. That is because it is advertised as a public hearing, and we probably will have additional members of the public that did not hear it last time around. Step's not working. Okay. Anyway, the item overview: the Landscape and Lighting Assessment District. These are formed through state law. It's part of the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972. It's usually formed by developers. Otherwise, a vote is required. In fact, 100% of the time that I've seen it here in the city, it has been done by developers. It allows for parcel owners to participate in the cost of landscaping that benefits their property. Without this tool, the ability to provide landscape areas might be diminished if all costs were borne by the agency itself. The history of the engineer's report: it is prepared on an annual basis. It incorporates past expenses and revenue as well as projected expenses and revenue. Basically, we look at the past, project what's coming at us in terms of those expenses, and then we attempt to go ahead and prepare a report that estimates where the assessments for the upcoming years will need to be. It does make recommendations on those adjustments, and it's based upon data that's populated in the city's accounting system, which is MUNIS. What about this here? It does incorporate everything Parks knows about the zone since taking over maintenance about 5 years ago. Proposition 218 hearings will not be occurring this year due to a number of reasons. What about next year? Proposition 218 hearings are anticipated to occur in the following year. That to some degree is subject on COVID-19. If we don't have the ability to do public outreach in the way we would like, we'll be discussing with council how we might move forward with that. We do hope to pursue mergers of zones 10A through 10I as well, and staff will work with the city attorney to determine if the city attorney's experience suggests another path that would allow us to simplify the approach that has occurred over the last several years, and hopefully that'll approach allow us to reduce the potential for new zones. As I mentioned last meeting, we've been successful over the last several years in not adding additional zones to the citywide district. We do expect that will become more difficult over time. So we hope to identify additional ways to reduce that potential. And we will also be looking for greater flexibility in managing the fund balances or deficits. We already have some tools that we've incorporated, but we're always looking for more. The one outstanding proposal for zones, which I've mentioned before, is merge zones 10A through I. Right now, the zones range from a low of about $20 up to $59, meaning that the parcel owners who have the reduced assessments will probably oppose that, but we hope to go ahead and present a goal or a method to show them that it is ultimately in their best interest in terms of the zones moving forward by merging them. We will seek to get additional efficiencies in there, and we see there's quite a bit of potential for efficiency as we allow our staff to focus on one zone rather than 10. One of the impediments is this is similar to a Proposition 218, and Proposition 218s have not historically been successful in the last the few years that we were doing them. This is Zone 10A. It shows the multitude of individual zones within it, and it also shows for 10C along the right side there are 3 areas of street landscaping that are shared. That means in that particular case, the funding for that is shared between Zone 10B, D, E, F, G, H, and I for 10C. As you look at other areas that are landscaped through here, the zones that participate will vary. Moving on to what happened at last meeting, July 1st, Council did approve the engineer's report and did not request any amendments. Council also adopted the resolution of intention to levy and collect proposed annual assessments. Tonight's action, we're requesting that Council conduct a public hearing and receive public comment if there is any, address any unresolved comments, again if any, and adopt engineer's report as may be revised. We'll also be looking to adopt the resolution which confirms the diagram and annual assessments as set forth in the engineer's report, and authorize and direct the city clerk to file a diagram and assessments with the auditor of Madera County. So the recommended action is to adopt the resolution confirming the diagram and assessments, and again authorize and direct the city clerk to file those. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate that. Can you go back to that screen, please?
Right here?
Yeah.
Sure.
Just for assistance sake, I'll ask if there's any members of council if they have any questions regarding this particular item. I will ask our city clerk if we've received any public comment regarding this particular item.
None received, Mayor.
Hearing none, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for action with the recommended action before you on the screen, or at least it was for a moment.
So move to adopt the resolution presented.
Second.
Ms. Montoy, do we need those stated, or at least to show that there's 2 separate actions on this one item?
No, I think it's actually, no, you do not need to separate it.
Okay, I believe it was moved by Councilman Hawley and seconded by Councilman Montes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. To approve item C2, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Mr. Helmuth. I appreciate the continued work on those landscape zones and lighting assessments. Moving on to item D1, this is an agreement with WSD LLC. This is a California limited liability company for an airport property lease agreement. I believe Mr. Foss will be presenting for us this evening.
Members of council, let me share my screen. Okay, should be there for all of you, my PowerPoint presentation. This should be fairly short and quick. If we go back to July 1, the council approved a rate lease increase up to 32 cents per square foot and this will be our first lease agreement for the airport. The specific location that we're talking about is highlighted here at the airport, and I'll have a couple other slides showing exactly where it is so you have a better idea. This is a private company, as the mayor indicated, a private lease for WSD LLC. They are going to be building a 32 or 37,000 square foot hangar. What's interesting to note too is this will be their second hangar. I believe you can see my mouse, but this first smaller hangar here on the screen, just to the south of it, is their other hangar that they do have out at the airport. The annual rent for this location will be $11,840, and that is based again on the recent rate study of 32 cents per square foot. The term of lease is 26 years, 6 months, and it is ending December 1st, 2049. I didn't include some of the other bullet point facts for this hangar space, but some questions we might have is what happens at the end of that? Well, at the end of that, basically, if they decide not to re-up the lease, then they leave the hangar. They're not going to take them with it. It's a big hangar, and it becomes City of Madera property. They do have in the agreement for the lease a chance and an opportunity to re-sign the lease. Here is the location again. It's not a great photo, so I believe on my next slide there, it kind of gives you a little bit of a, hopefully it's playing fine for everybody there, but that should give you some indication of where it's at on the north side of the airport. And where it finishes is I'm actually looking back towards the office of the airport. It's a short slide, so I can show it one more time for everybody real quick. So that where that sign's at is where it's going to be. That smaller hangar is the existing hangar that the company does own, and there's the rest of the airport in that direction to the south. This is what the finished product should look like. This is their plans that they're submitting for the hangar. So it actually cosmetically does look fairly nice and quite a bit nicer than some of our existing hangars. It's going to be a bigger hangar for a jet that they actually already purchased. So it's going to be at a hangar for one large private jet. So recommendation is for us to adapt the resolution approving the lease agreement with WSD LLC, which is a California limited liability company. And as an alternative, council may elect not to approve the agreement with the company if they have any recommendations or suggestions for it. And with that, is there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Foss. Appreciate that presentation. Any questions of Dan regarding this presentation? Just a quick one, Dan. It's a 29-year lease, or December 1 of 2049.
Correct. I think it's 26 years, but yeah, close, very close.
Well, in the presentation, it says conclude on December 1 of 2049. This one says 26 years, but 2049 is 29 years.
It is 29 years, so that's a typo.
So at that time, is the price per square foot then negotiable?
It is, and one thing that I did not include that was on July 1's study, so I didn't want to repeat myself too much, but that's an excellent question, is every 5 years, there's actually, going by the CIP, they are subject to increase for their rent set. So every 5 years, they will be subject to a standard rate increase.
Great. Great. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Any other questions? No attendees have any questions? I'll ask our city clerk if there's been any written communication regarding this particular item.
None received, Mayor.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll bring it back to council for action on item D1.
So move to approve D1 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Gallegos and seconded by Councilman Montes to approve item D1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
You opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Foss, for that. Really appreciate that presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
Moving on to item D2, this is pipeline protection and inspection agreement with SFPP LP for inspection services related to the Fresno River Trail undercrossings at Gateway Drive and the Union Pacific Railroad project. Mr. Hillman.
Good evening, Mayor. I'll be taking this item on behalf of the engineering department.
Hello,
and
Ms.
I
Bitter.
will now share my screen. Once again, good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and staff. This item is related to the Fresno River Trail undercrossing project. I thought I'd give you a quick update. As you may recall, we awarded the project last October. We were still getting some final approvals from the Corps of Engineers, and we were able to get underway last February. So they've been marching along the bank. Hopefully you've had a chance to see the progress of the trail being constructed, and I'd say we are about halfway at this point. So early in the project construction, the contractors on all projects are required to call before you dig. It used to be called the USA Underground Service Alert, and that is to contact all of the utilities, and they mark their facilities, and then if further investigation is needed, you can do that so there are no conflicts or potential problems during construction. Within this project, we have Sprint fiber optic, we have QS communication, there are several ducts of communication for AT&T, and we also have the Kinder Morgan gas pipeline. They all responded to the USA, and the only one that has been a conflict has been the Kinder Morgan pipeline. I wanted to give you an illustration of where this particular pipeline is. I took this picture today standing on Gateway Drive looking over towards the railroad. So it is within the Union Pacific easement, which would be 50 feet east and west of the tracks. And this particular Kinder Morgan pipeline is about 40 feet away from the tracks, and it varies in depth from anywhere from 6 to 10 feet. When the pipeline was originally installed, the Fresno River Channel doesn't really look like it does today. So we've had to very cautiously proceed, and we potholed several locations and determined that we need to continue to coordinate with Kinder Morgan for our trail project. Not only the construction of the trail itself, which is along the riverbank, it's more than just a slab of concrete on dirt. There's actually footings on both sides of the trail to secure it to the bank just because of the nature of the water flows. So they go deeper than the top of the trail. We're also required to construct a canopy adjacent to the railroad that's to protect any users of the trail from debris and other items potentially falling off of the trains. So I just wanted to give a little background on Kinder Morgan. It's a gas product pipeline. They purchased the Santa Fe Pacific Pipeline, or SFPP, which is what you see in the agreement, in 1997, so that they could gain access to more carrier pipes in the Western United States. So the original easement is between SFPP and UPRR, the railroad, and they have the first rights to be there, and we are, need to respect that, and our project needs to be coordinated with Kinder Morgan for that reason. So as I mentioned before, between the trail construction of the trail footings and then also the canopy structure footings, there is currently a conflict with the depth to the pipeline and the required clearance. But we are working with Kinder Morgan closely, and also with our design engineer. Earlier this evening, there was an item approving the amendment to the design engineer's contract to help us work through these issues. Kinder Morgan did recognize that this is more than just a show up and make sure everything's okay, and they have since requested that a more formal agreement be in place between the city and Kinder Morgan, because they are involving their engineering staffs, and they are spending quite a bit of time out on the project site monitoring construction, and will be continuing to when we actually are constructing over the pipeline. The agreement itself outlines the terms for the payment to them for those services. The initial estimate is about $10,000. They would like for those fees to be paid up front, and then the actual costs will be determined upon the completion. If it's less, we should receive a refund. If it's more, we would need to pay that difference. So tonight's action would be approving the pipeline protection and inspection agreement, and also authorizing payment of the initial $10,000 estimate. And I will take any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, Ellen, very much. I can see that the project is moving along fairly quickly, I think, from just passing by and watching the progress. Any questions from council? Seeing none, has there been any written communication on this particular item?
None received, Mayor.
Thank you, Alicia. Councilman Montes.
I'm sorry, so I wasn't quick enough. Technology is not cooperating with me today. So, Mr. Bitter, was that $10,000 estimate in line with our engineer's estimate? Is that where we arrived at that $10,000?
The estimate is based on approximately $1,000 a day of their manpower per diem costs to be on site inspecting. So that accounts for the time while they're constructing the trail, and then also for the time when we come back and are building the canopy. We will work with the contractor to minimize that time, and hopefully that will keep those costs under control.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll call for action from council on item D2.
Move to approve item D2 as presented, Mr. Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilman Montes and seconded by Councilman Rodriguez to approve item D2 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Excuse me. Thank you very much. Moving on to item D3. This is amendment to the Madera Municipal Code relating to deposits for utility services. Mr. Sanchez.
Can we?
That item was taken off.
Taken off.
Yes, it was. Was it not?
Yes, it was taken off calendar.
Yes, it was. Thank you. My apologies. So that will take us into administrative reports. This is item E1, the placement of a measure on the ballot for voters to consider establishing a cannabis business license tax to be put in place should the city permit cannabis and hemp business in the future. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Arnoldo Rodriguez, the city manager. I'm going to share my screen with you. The item this evening is a proposal to add a ballot measure to the general election the first week of November, which would be November the 3rd, commonly referred to as the presidential election. In terms of background and to provide the conversation some context, the city of Madera has historically prohibited cannabis-related businesses, and by cannabis, I would also include the phrase hemp. And this pertains to cultivation, manufacturing, testing, or the retail sale of. However, as the council is aware, back in November of 2016, the voters of the state of California approved certain cannabis uses subject to local approval. Since that occurred, and actually I stand corrected, it was in November of 2018, I apologize. Since that occurred, there has been various measures at the state level that have provided some clarity to what that means and what is and what is not permitted. So right now, a local jurisdiction can permit the sale of cannabis and hemp for retail sales, the manufacturing, the cultivation, and the testing and the distribution of said sales. Locally here in the city of Madera, we currently do not permit any of those activities. Based on council direction, the city retained the services of HDL to begin to explore what that potentially looks like and what would it mean for the city of Madera. So this evening before you, there is a resolution that if it is approved this evening, would allow the city to place a ballot measure on November's ballot. So the resolution would call for the placement of a ballot. The ballot itself would be for an ordinance that would create a business license tax for the city of Madera. To place this on the ballot, a supermajority vote is required. Traditionally, in most measures, it's a majority, but in this specific case, because it would be for a ballot measure, it is a supermajority, which means that 5 affirmative votes would be required to place it on the ballot. If it were to go on the ballot, the voters of the city of Madera would have to approve the ballot by 50% plus 1. So that would be 50% of the voters plus 1 more would have to pass the ballot measure. If the ballot measure were to be approved, and then it would obviously pass. So the staff report contains a resolution and an ordinance. Just to provide a little bit of clarity of why we included the both. The resolution is to place the ballot measure or the measure in November's general election. The ordinance itself is being submitted to the voters to establish the tax, the business license tax for both cannabis and hemp activities within the city. At a future date, more than likely in the next couple of months, staff will come back to the city council. At that point, we will be asking the council for feedback, and I would envision that there are some community forums or workshops where we'll be discussing this part of it in terms of where are the appropriate measures and what are the appropriate avenues or tools to regulate and permit cannabis businesses in the community. So those are typically referred to as the regulatory scheme. So is a use permit allowed or is it required? Time of operation, distances to sensitive uses, those types of measures. That is not before the council this evening, so that will come at a future date. So tonight, it's a resolution. The resolution itself refers to the ordinance, and that's why we have the 2 items. So in terms of the ordinance being submitted to the voters, a full copy of the ordinance is not required to be printed on the ballot. Rather, election regulations stipulate that the ballot measure has a maximum of 75 words. So what we attempted to do on the ballot measure that's contained in the resolution is we attempted to capture what the measure does in those 75 words. But the measure itself, if approved, would implement the entire ordinance as presented in your packet this evening. A couple of key items to highlight in terms of what would the ordinance do. And this is spelled out in the ballot measure. Again, it's spelled out in the 75 words that I mentioned. So again, this would be for cannabis business license tax. And this would set the maximum, not the minimum, rather the maximum tax rates, $10 per canopy square foot for cultivation. However, there is a clause which it would be adjustable for inflation, 6% gross receipts for retail businesses, and 4% for all other cannabis business activities. Again, the council, if the ballot were to be approved by the voters, the council can set a lower threshold. So hypothetically, if the council were to say, we think 6% of gross receipts is too high, we want to do it at 5% or 5.5% or 3 or 4, whatever the number is, the council has that discretion. However, if the maximum the council could go is 6% because it would be approved by the voters. In order to increase the 6% figure, it would have to go back to the voters of the city of Madera at a future ballot measure. The ballot question, and this is how it's currently written, and it's how it's proposed in the resolution, and this is how it would show up on the ballot in November, would read, shall the measure which would tax cannabis and hemp businesses if city permits and regulates such businesses at annual rates not to exceed $10 per canopy square foot for cultivation, adjustable for inflation, 6% gross receipts for retail businesses, and 4% for all other such businesses, which is projected to generate $720,000 to $1,080,000 annually and continue in effect until terminated by city voters with funds generated used for general fund purposes be adopted. Those are 75 words. Myself, City Attorney Hilda Montoy, and David McPherson of HDL took a lot of different turns trying to craft the language that we felt best captured it. There were various iterations floating around, and collectively we felt that this reflected council's direction. So in terms of the implementation, again, I discussed this a few minutes ago. The council at a future date, if this were to be approved by the voters of the city, could establish a lower tax threshold. However, you cannot go above and beyond what's currently contained in the ballot measure. And in order to repeal the ordinance, the voters of the city would have to repeal the ordinance. So the council at a future date would not have the ability to repeal it how it's currently drafted. I talked about this, but this is largely for the benefit, I think, of community members. At a future council date, we will bring back a regulatory ordinance, which will establish a time, place, and manner of how these businesses are established. It's going to determine if a use permit is required, if it's not required, a number of establishments, if that's something the council would like to do. Hypothetically, our neighbors to the north have identified 2 cannabis businesses per council district. Our neighbors to the south, I believe they identified a total of 5 or 6 total retail establishments. So those are things that the council can elect to do. Those items are not before the council this evening. On top of that, you can establish distances to sensitive uses. And the reason I bring that up is that's very common when it comes to uses that could potentially create obnoxious conditions for nearby properties. Again, this is not on the table tonight. That would be done at a future council date. The financial impact, I talked about the potential revenue that it would generate for the city. Those are based on a lot of assumptions. And we obviously helped, or David assisted coming to preparing those assumptions. In terms of the cost to the city, right now, we are looking at approximately $90,000 to $100,000 to put on the ballot. That figure, I do not have a precise figure today. That's going to be based on the number of registered voters for the city of Madera. We've been in discussions with the county clerk, and she is helping us prepare, she'll be providing us with that number. And the cost, staff time is not included in this, and neither is time that to compensate our city attorney. However, our contract with HDL is not to exceed $30,000. And with that, staff is recommending that the council approve the resolution, which would place the ballot measure on November's general election ballot for approval or come for consideration by the voters of the city of Madera. So with that, that concludes my presentation, Mayor and Council. Thank you.
Mayor, may I add a couple of points?
Of course, Ms. Montoy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, members of the public. As Mr. Rodriguez noted, what will be in the ballot itself will be that question that's a little complex and complicated. The elections code says, don't put the entire ordinance, and we couldn't because it's 19 pages long. So in that 75 word question is what's going to be before the voters. And it is a bit awkward, but we have to also follow very specific language that's required under the elections code. So everything has to start with the words "shall the measure," and it has to be end with the words "be adopted." The question has to include the potential revenue that would be generated, and it also is required to include how long it would be in effect. And as noted by the city manager, it would continue until terminated by city voters. So that's a ballot question. Having said that, members of the public can always get a copy of the full ordinance before they vote if they would like to review it more carefully. There will also be, per section 5 of the resolution, there will also be a synopsis of the measure that will be crafted and published in the newspaper. And finally, under section 12 of the resolution, the city attorney is required to prepare what's called an impartial legal analysis. And that is put in the ballot, and not in the ballot when you go in to vote, but that's part of the pamphlet, the ballot pamphlet. And I believe the the number of words for that is 250 words. And there's a very specific way, again, of crafting the impartial analysis. It has to be impartial, as the elections code says. And so I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Montoya. I appreciate that. And to that point, that's why I think it's just so very, very vital when we move forward with this, especially with COVID and the restrictions we have as it pertains to gatherings or town hall meetings and things of that nature, to have as much information and to be able to answer all the questions of our community. And I know there's maybe websites to go to in certain direction, but I think it's very, very important for us to reach out to the community and explain exactly what you had just mentioned, Ms. Montoya. With that, I'll open it up to council members for any questions or comments they have from Mr. Rodriguez's report. Councilman Montes.
And so it's just kind of a clarification. So we're putting this on for the November elections, and if it gets approved, we'll go through the motions of introduction, first, second reading at that time. But this is what will be on there unchanged.
Once the voters adopt it, it doesn't come back to the council. Right now, it's before you. You've reviewed it. You're going to deliberate in a minute. You've considered it, and that's going to go to the voters. And that's why it's the voters that will be adopting the ordinance. So it will not come back to you.
So a point of clarification, what will come back before council is a regulatory scheme that's going to outline where they're permitted and the process of how to permit them. The tax component of it would not come back before the council. That goes directly to the voters. And that's what's before council this evening.
Correct. Thank you for that clarification. I'm sorry, Steve, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so essentially this is not allowing or disallowing. This is just taxing what is already allowed.
Hilda, you're on mute.
Yes. If going back to that question, it says, shall the measure, which would tax cannabis and hemp businesses, if the city permits and regulates such businesses. So we put that language in there. So if the city does adopt a regulatory ordinance, this would kick in if adopted by the voters.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia and then Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you. So to be clear, this is not a new tax on the residents of Madera. This is a tax on cannabis production and distribution and sales, etc. Correct?
Correct. So this would not be a new tax on the residents of Madera. However, if this would be a tax on the cultivation, if a customer were to purchase cannabis in the city of Madera, then the customer would pay the tax. So it's not a general tax. It's simply for the purposes of cannabis and hemp. Correct.
So part of the equation for me is safety. I believe that not regulating a black market in our community where illegal sales, illegal productions are going on in our community and we don't regulate the process is a detriment to the safety of our community. And so I'm interested in the regulation part and going after those who produce and have no responsibility to actually say or inform the public about what their product does or does not do. And I'm also part of the baby boomer generation. I was very surprised to learn that the vast majority of the folks that are walking into a retail store to purchase are the ones with arthritis, bad backs, you name it. And it's just a different way to alleviate pain for a lot of folks. And the baby boomer generation is one of the beneficiaries of that. I am very aware of the community's concerns regarding bringing this new item to the city. But I think that what we can do is once we start going and having discussions about what exactly the monies are going to be used for, the revenue generated, I think we can have a very productive discussion regarding health and fighting abuse. There's a lot of ways that we could use some monies to fight drug abuse. I'm very much interested in that. There are communities who are benefiting as we speak in our surrounding areas, some cities large and some small, but they are generating revenue. And so I'm very much interested in having this put on the ballot so that the voters can decide what they want to do, either approve or disapprove. And then at the same time, get to work on the ordinance to spell out the details about what exactly it would mean to have cannabis in the city of Madera. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Member Lynn. And I think the question that I had was answered by Hilda. Councilmember Montes had asked about what was being proposed here and what was going to be submitted to the voters. But our city manager also expressed that the details in the ordinance can also be amended or modified once brought to the council. Is that correct, city manager or Hilda? But what's before us here is just to submit to the voters is a ballot and the wording. Obviously, with the limit of words that you have, you condense that into the verbiage that was submitted.
Right. Mr. McPherson may want to speak more about this, but he's the one that really recommended the threshold amounts and the maximums based on his experience in other jurisdictions. If this were to go forward, be placed on the ballot, adopted by the voters, and then the council adopts the regulatory ordinance, and there's business, and by the way, it's the businesses that are taxed, although as Mr. Rodriguez said, whoever goes and buys ultimately pays, but technically it's the businesses that are taxed. So yes, that is the way it would work. And the city council, say 2 years into it or 3 years into it, the council could say, well, they're going to a neighboring jurisdiction because they're only charging them 5% instead of 6%. And the council would have the authority to weigh all that, have public meetings, and consider reducing it at some point.
Yes,
or it could do really well and keep it at that high amount.
Yes, thank you, Hilda. And that's exactly what I wanted clarification is that this body has the authority to make those modifications in any case, whether we want to increase or reduce the rate.
You don't have the authority to increase it above what the ordinance says.
Correct. So if it's up to 7%, you can decrease it is what I meant. So thank you. And also just to reiterate that we are allowing the voters to make this decision. You know, I'm super excited that the council has allowed our voters to determine whether or not we should tax cannabis. I've been a big proponent of this. I think in 2017, when we first started our first budget review, you know, I had suggested that what other ways of revenue can this city produce, and obviously this was when cannabis was brought into the conversation. Wasn't a lot of hype at the time, obviously, and even to this day, I'm sure that it's not a lot of hype within our local community. But surely, as Councilmember Garcia mentioned, that you know there's a big need to regulate this industry, especially within our community. There's a lot of black market activity that's happening here, and obviously, we don't want to take from our general fund to be able to take from our general fund to be able to combat that. When we have an industry that can certainly help with that, alleviate with that, revenues can reach areas of desperate needs such as our parks, roads, food bank, animal shelter, youth programs that are such a big need here. You know, I think one of the concerns that a citizen had was, you know, bringing additional revenues, but how do we do that? And one of the biggest things I think is education, is helping our kids understand what the benefits and what's not good about a certain, you know, taking a certain path or what have you. But who's doing that now? If we don't partner up and there's no funding, then we can certainly not, we can't do that. So let's utilize these funds to be able to help our community grow in a very positive way. You know, I just wanted to share something with you regarding our Monterey County. And you know, when I say cannabis, I'm not specifically referring to marijuana. I know that that's been brought up quite a bit. Marijuana is just another negative, it's a word that has negative connotation to it. Cannabis is an industry that provides many elements. And Monterey County alone, in 86 acres, has produced over 14 to 15 million dollars just in tax revenues from these industries. And again, that's only cultivation. That's not dispensary. And I know that the dispensary has brought about a negative view of things, but it doesn't have to be dispensaries. There's cultivation, there's manufacturing, there's dispensary testing. But when I look at those numbers from Monterey County, just in 86 acres, Madera County is ideal. We have the land, we have the resources, and we certainly have the freeways, the airports, and we can certainly make something happen here. Even if it's 10% of that, that's $1.5 million that we can certainly utilize to help alleviate some of the concerns that we have here in our community. Again, I'm just excited, Mr. Mayor. I'm excited that the council has allowed for our voters to determine whether we tax this business or not. And with that, Mr. Mayor, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Councilman. And once again, as long as we inform our community to the best of our ability and continue this open dialogue and open conversation and being transparent, I think that's exactly what we owe the voter. Mr. McPherson, anything that you wanted to add?
Yes, Mayor, thank you for the opportunity of that. So one of the points I made about the no tax is in the purpose and intent section, we specifically wrote this in the first section. It says, the cannabis business tax shall not be separately identified or otherwise specifically assessed or charged to any member, customer, patient, or caretaker. And the reason why is we didn't want them to pass a tax that's imposed upon them to the consumer in your community. And the voters are saying, yes, I'll pass that because it's a tax on the business, not on me, even though obviously it's built into the cost of the product. It's not a tax on them. It's on the business.
Thank you very much for that clarification. I appreciate it. Councilman Robinson has a comment.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, you know, just because cannabis, you know, is illegal in the States, you know, it's morally wrong. Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right. Are you talking about $720,000 $1 million profit? That's a hypothesis. You know, Madera is really poor, and how are you gonna get money out there just to buy a joint? They have high unemployment. We have homelessness. You have people sleeping in the riverbed. And in fact, when we went down there to inspect and talk to the homeless, they had to arrest a person that was selling drugs down there. It's this way here is going to be a blemish on our image. And also it's going to increase illegal sales because then they're going to lower the sales prices on the street so you can get it cheaper, just like people buying crystal meth. You know, they make it in the cars or wherever, and they sell it. It's cheaper than marijuana. And plus, you're talking about the corporation. They can come in here and they're going to buy up. They can have the money to open up a business. The small guy who's out there trying to struggle and feed his family, buying drugs, they can be left out. And then you can't stop the black market. The war on drugs is proof of that. And you guys were saying, oh, we got $1 million in care to cover businesses and people are homeless. I mean, or their rent, or they're missing their rent payment, so we can cover that. But it's just a drop in the bucket. It can't go everywhere. It's going to be the same with this. Trying to cover animal shelter, youth program, etc. You know, I think it's a what do you say, a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman, for your comments. Yes, Councilman Hawley. If you unmute, please.
Thing I look at, we was when we started out with that lotto, it was always talking about it was coming to help the schools and money that was going to go to the schools. That lasted for about a few months. And we looked at the chance, see how they had to go under. So all the money that everybody was talking about was going to happen for our city has failed. And here we've been to open up something, we on COVID, and here we've been to open up a drug rehabilitation center to distribute drugs, and there's no money now. We can't pay our rent now, but yet we're going to open up a business that disperse marijuana and to our kids. That's not education to me. That's sending our kids the wrong message. If we let them now know that we're okay for them to have a dispensary, so now we can make it legal. You still got to be drug tested. Why are you going to have a drug that you have to be drug tested for, and yet you can't get a job without it? I mean, that we contradicting a lot of things that we've been saying. This is not turning out the way that the people really was expected to be. That's why it didn't pass in Madera County the first time. So my understanding is, sure, we have poor communities. We're going to have poor communities now. We still in deficit. COVID is not no joke. And to pass something that is taking $100,000 from people's pockets is not a great idea right now. So I just want them to know how I feel about it. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Appreciate your comments. I'll ask our city clerk if there has been any written public comment for this particular item.
None received, Mayor.
Thank you. Nor do I see any attendees wishing to speak. So with that, I'll bring it back to council for action if there's no further discussion on item E1. And again, Mr. Rodriguez, this is going to require a supermajority this evening.
Correct.
You're okay. So it's going to be a minimum of 5 yes votes to move this forward.
That's correct.
So, thank you. So at this time, if there's no further discussion, I'll call for action on item E1.
Motion to approve E1 as read.
Second.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Garcia and seconded by Councilman Rodriguez to approve item E1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
We should anyway, just simply because it is a supermajority requirement. So I'll ask our city clerk to do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hawley?
No.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Montes?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia?
Yes.
Councilmember Gallegos?
Yes.
Councilmember Robinson?
No.
Mayor Magellan?
Yes.
That's 5 yes, 2 no. Motion passes.
Thank you very much, Alicia, for that. And once again, in closing, I just do want to reiterate that as we move forward, we continue to loop in the public, give them the opportunity, as was mentioned before, to not only have input, but of course, exercise their right to vote in November on this ballot measure. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Montoy. Thank you, Mr. McPherson, for being with us this evening, and look forward to moving forward. With that, we will move on to item E2. This is discussion on status and action taken on measures to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19.
Mayor, members of the council, brief update in terms of where we stand. Sarah Boss, the county's public health director, provided an excellent summary of where the current case count's at here in Madera County and some of the measures that have been taken to try to mitigate some of those items. Here at the city of Madera, we continue to be physically close to the public. However, we are still open for business. We have a relatively small number of staff people that continue to come to the office. Most of our office employees, we are continuing to encourage telecommuting. So far, it seems to be working well. We are still answering our phones. We're still responding to emails, and we're still providing services. And we continue to have city council meetings and planning commission meetings and the various different boards and committees. At council's direction, at our special meeting last week, we have begun to distribute gloves and face masks. We've distributed them to Quest. They were very appreciative. To the Madera Downtown Business Association, to the Chamber of Commerce, to CAPMC. The few others escape me. I know I delivered some on Friday to Madera Community Hospital. Some of the council and the community may be aware, Community Hospital had identified a shortage of masks. These are not the N95s, but rather these are the non-surgical masks. I found out about it Friday. I delivered 1,500 of them to them on by Friday afternoon. Throughout the weekend, myself and Crystal Kidwell of the Sister City program spoke on numerous occasions. We reached out to the General Director of Taiwan, Director Joseph Ma. He had reached out to the Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce, and we were able to secure an additional 5,000 face masks for the hospital. So we have those masks on hand, and we'll be delivering them hopefully tomorrow to Madera Community Hospital. So far, the Director General Ma's office and the Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce has donated 15,000 masks to the city of Madera, and 6,000 gloves. So 3,000 pairs of gloves. So we're obviously extremely grateful for their efforts, and it's pretty exciting where the city can in turn donate them to different businesses in our community and different organizations that we know are in need of assistance right now. With that, the city of Madera has had a very eventful past 36 hours. As the community is aware, we had a very unfortunate case yesterday midday. Glad to announce that the alleged perpetrator has been apprehended. So I'm thankful for Marina Police Department who assisted in those efforts. And earlier this morning, we have a case of a missing child where Madera County Sheriff's personnel has been assisting us, and we've also requested that the FBI assist us in those efforts. The reason why I bring this up is to assure the community that even though that we're in the middle of a pandemic, our police department continues to work tirelessly to try to solve these items. So yesterday's case was quickly, we were fortunate that we were quick to apprehend the alleged perpetrator of the crime. So we're very fortunate, but this is a good reminder that even though we're in the middle of a pandemic, your police department continues to go above and beyond, and they're working tirelessly and they're working overtime to make sure that your community is safe. So with that, thank you very much, Mayor, and I'll turn it back over to the council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez. Any questions or comments regarding the COVID update of Mr. Rodriguez? Thank you.
Mayor, yes. I think we should acknowledge Crystal's hard work in getting this done and her connections with the Director General, the Chamber of Commerce. And so if we could put together a proclamation for the different entities, and Arnoldo can walk us through who needs to be acknowledged completely, I think it would be a really good idea, because this is our time of need and they're stepping up big time to help us out.
Agreed. Thank you very much for that comment. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, Mayor Miller, and I would concur with Councilmember Garcia in regards to a proclamation recognizing the Director General Joseph Ma and our sister city of Taiwan, Ilan. Hopefully, with this proclamation that we can present to them, they might be able to also recognize in their own city council and/or type of agency if they have something similar to us. But I would certainly concur with Councilmember Garcia's request.
Thank you very much for that. I'm sure we can get working on that right away. If there's no other comments, we will move into item F. This is council member reports. And I will start with Councilmember Robinson.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. How about Councilwoman Gallegos?
Nothing to report, just a comment on all the hard work that our officers have done in the city of Madera, and just kudos to all them, and tirelessly hours away from their family, so appreciated, because I know a lot of not just the Darren Camarena staff was very uneasy, and to find out that this gentleman was apprehended, it takes a relief off of everyone. So job well done. You've put aside a lot of rest of ease of people of having anxiety about the incident that had happened so close to home. And so I just wanted to thank them for all that time and effort. And I know it's taken away from their family. We had to call in a lot of people. And so truly appreciate it. Chief, if you can also share that with staff. And our staff working to keep us above water and keep us rolling and chugging, and the time that everybody puts in our city here at Madera. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
Just want to remind everybody that to protect ourselves, our family, our friends, our grandbabies, it's important to wear a mask. I wear mine every day. I keep it in my car. Every time I forget and if I'm going to walk into a place, a business or something, and I forget, I turn right back around and I go put on my mask. So I would encourage all of us to do the same thing to protect our communities and our first responders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilman Hawley.
Yes, hi. First of all, I just want to shout out to everybody. Thank you for all your prayers and condolences and to go forward with my family. Right now we under this coronavirus thing, but I want the council and everyone to know that they heard it from me. The day that we're going to try to put my wife to rest is August the 14th. Even if it's one person or 100 people, that's going to be the final day, because we got to have closure. And the only way you can do that is finish what you started. When we was making arrangements, we had everything started to go. Then all of a sudden, Jay's got a call and says, we've been shut down again. So that was in the midst of that happening. So we got back together and said, hey, we just got to do this. If it's outdoors, it's outdoors. But that'll be the day. Or as word yet, it's either Second Baptist or Jay's Chapel. So again, thank you, everybody. Thanks, council and staff, for the flowers and stuff that they send and the love and prayers that they send out to us. Thank you.
Mr. Councilman, we love you and there's nothing you can do about it.
Thank you.
In your words. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Medellin. And I know that we can't say this enough, but again, I just wanted to extend condolences to Councilmember Hawley and his family. And in time, if there's anything that you need, please make sure you let us know, and we'd be more than happy to help with anything. So again, condolences to you and your family. And again, just want to thank staff for all their work, everything that they've done, especially throughout these times of these hard times that we've all been going through. And as Councilmember Garcia had mentioned, wearing a mask was probably not as popular about a month or two ago, but now it's become something of a norm. And I think as responsible citizens and residents of this community, we want to continue to wear our masks, especially in public places and in businesses, so that we can protect not only those businesses, but protect ourselves and more importantly, protect our community, so that we don't get those high numbers that are showing, and just doing the good work. And that's every one of us in this community that can certainly take on that initiative. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for those kind words. Councilman Montes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to echo the sentiments from the council. That thank you for your staff. I know these are very challenging times, and you guys are moving forward. Sometimes you make it look easy. Sometimes, we have things that come up that are challenging. But I just want to say thank you to everybody, engineering, PD, administration, public works. Everybody is doing something. Everybody, even if you don't see them, if they're not on the news, they are doing their job on a day-to-day basis, and it can be dangerous for them as well. And I love to see how the community is coming together. We're helping out the hospital, other communities, other governments are helping us out. It's a beautiful thing. And to Councilmember Hawley, condolences, and we're here for you. So anything you need, let us know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Councilman. As I mentioned before, actually before we started the meeting, when Councilman Hawley had told me days ago that more than likely he wouldn't be here this evening, and when I saw his glowing face, I was very happy. And I truly believe he's here because this is family, and what better time than now than to be around family. And I truly feel that way about our entire community, and the love and support that a lot of people give one another, and especially during this very difficult time where it's stressful, it's taxing on us mentally and physically. There's nothing greater than a thank you. There's nothing greater than an appreciation. And sometimes it just happens at the just most opportune or inopportune time. And so with that, I also want to give my thank yous and show my support and appreciation for our police department. It's the last few days have been very, very difficult on our entire team, on top of the COVID, with what's been going on. And I think that they do work around the clock. This is their community that they do serve and protect and take pride in. And so a heartfelt appreciation and thank you to our police department, and also to our chief of police, who has been in front of the camera quite a bit over the last 36 to 48 hours and has represented our community very, very well. And so thank you, Chief. My apologies, Mr. Rodriguez. I'm not sure if you had mentioned that you were on the 8:30 a.m. Madera Downtown Association meeting this evening, where you had promised a mask to them as well. But the discussion with the Downtown Association was, excuse me, the future of our Old Timers Day Parade, which it was decided this morning that that will not happen, which is really just a couple of months away in September. But there's a lot of optimism, and we're looking forward to coming together as a community. But in hearing some of the details of some of the small businesses in Madera, and the difficulty with this now W kind of effect, and we seem to be once again on the decline. It's now more than ever that we need to lean on one another, support one another, help one another, and especially those small businesses and those restaurants that can now only offer takeout and delivery and things like that. Debbie Bray at the Chamber of Commerce is doing an absolute fantastic job in trying to get masks to those businesses who need it, or who customers maybe walk in or don't have one. And so thank you to all of our small businesses, all the staff and the team at City Hall, and all the city employees. Thank you all for your efforts. It just means so much, and sometimes it is out of sight, out of mind, but it's so very important when our garbage is picked up, our potholes are filled, our landscape medians are mowed, and our parks are still looking fantastic, and we can turn on the faucet and good quality water comes out. That's due to the strong efforts of our team here at the City of Madera. I think we all know on social media there's a big divide, and the questions are coming up about our future, which really is so unknown. And now that we talk about opening schools or not opening schools, what's the future of our economy, the future of our small businesses? My only ask is to be kind to one another. This is not the time to point blame. This is not the time to look back, but to look forward. And this is who we are as Maderans. We're resilient, and we will bounce back. Depending on how soon we bounce back really depends on us, and how willing we are to be kind to one another, to work together, and help one another lift ourselves up and out of this pandemic, which has affected all of us. So with that, once again, thank you, everybody, so very, very much. And we have two closed session items this evening, one for the City Council and one for the Housing Authority, which is the same board. So I'll ask Ms. Montoy, would it be one reading of both items, or do we need anything separate, or what is
I was going to ask if you wanted me to go ahead and read both items.
I opened the Housing Authority meeting in the very beginning, so technically it's still open. So why don't you just read both items, and then we will adjourn into closed session.
Thank you. And so with respect to the City Council, under G1, you have conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. Agency designated representatives Arnoldo Rodriguez, Wendy Silva, and Shay Johnson. Employee Organizations, General Bargaining Unit, Madera Affiliated City Employees Association, Mid-Management Employee Group. And then on the Housing Authority, I am assuming, based on the way it's written, that it's consideration of employment appointment. And so that should be, I think there's a typo, it should be 54957. And that would be for the position of Executive Director.
I will defer to our
If it's
authority
negotiations,
chair.
then it's not agendized correctly.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Say that again, please.
If it's to discuss negotiations with your candidate, then you can't do that tonight because it's not.
No,
agenda.
that's not what's going to happen tonight.
Okay, so it's for consideration. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you very much for that announcement, Hilda. And once again, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. Have a good evening.
And you want to have the council first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, City Council will go first.
Okay, so we will now, go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Oh, I was going to say the Board of Commissioners came out of closed session at 9:41, and with regard to action or with regard to closed session item H3, there was no action taken, and instructions were given to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And the City Council on item G1 returned at 9:43 p.m. And as to item G1, conference with labor negotiators, there's no reportable action. With that, everybody, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I wish you a good evening. Have a safe rest of the week. With that, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.